The massive alien ship appeared without warning on a clear Tuesday morning in April 2087. It hung silently above New York City, its dark metal surface reflecting the sunlight. Within hours, similar ships appeared over every major city on Earth. The world held its breath. Captain Alan Wright of the Earth Defense Fleet stood on the bridge of his ship, the Horizon, staring at the main screen. His palms were sweaty as he watched the alien vessel. It was at least 20 times larger than the Horizon, Earth's most advanced spaceship. "Captain, they're sending a message," said Lisa Cohen, the communications officer. Her voice shook slightly. Everyone on the bridge fell silent. "Put it through," Alan said, straightening his uniform. The screen flickered, revealing a tall, thin creature with blue skin and large black eyes. When it spoke, its words were translated by the computer. "Greetings, humans. I am Zixtal, envoy of the Galactic Council. Your species has achieved faster-than-light travel, which qualifies you for evaluation. Until this process is complete, Earth is under quarantine. No ships may leave your solar system." Alan stepped forward. "I am Captain Alan Wright of the Earth Defense Fleet. We mean no harm and wish to establish peaceful relations." The alien's expression didn't change. "Your intentions are irrelevant. The evaluation will determine your fate. Prepare to receive a delegation in 6 hours at these coordinates." The screen went dark. Alan turned to his second-in-command, Rick Palmer. "Contact the World Unity government immediately. Tell them we need to assemble a first contact team." 6 hours later, Alan stood in a large conference room at the World Unity government headquarters in Geneva. President Nancy Clark sat at the head of the table, surrounded by military leaders, scientists, and diplomats. "Captain Wright, you'll lead the meeting with these aliens," President Clark said. "Susan Miller will join you as our chief xenolinguist, along with Dr. Ben Howard, our top scientist." Susan Miller was a short woman with curly red hair and intense green eyes. At 35, she was the world's leading expert in theoretical alien languages. "Madam President," Susan said, "I should warn you that communication might be difficult, despite their translator technology. Concepts that seem basic to us might be unknown to them and vice versa." President Clark nodded. "Do your best. Our future depends on making a good impression." The delegation waited nervously at the designated coordinates, a field outside Geneva. At exactly the appointed time, a beam of light shot down from the alien ship above, and 3 tall blue figures materialized before them. Zixtal, the envoy, stepped forward. "We will now begin our evaluation of humanity. You will answer our questions truthfully." The meeting lasted for hours. The aliens asked about Earth's governments, technology, and resources, but mostly they asked about history, specifically about wars, conflicts, and violence. "Your species has engaged in constant warfare throughout your recorded history," Zixtal stated. "This is concerning," Alan tried to explain. "Yes, we've had a violent past, but we've learned from it. The World Unity government was formed 50 years ago, and we've had global peace since then." The alien's black eyes showed no emotion. "Past behavior predicts future behavior. The Council must determine if humans pose a threat to galactic stability." After the meeting, the delegation returned to the World Unity government headquarters. President Clark called an emergency session. "The situation is serious," Alan reported. "These aliens, the Council, they seem fixated on our violent history." Susan spoke up. "During the meeting, I noticed something strange about their language. There are concepts they don't seem to have words for. I need more data to confirm my suspicions." President Clark looked grim. "Meanwhile, we have another problem. The alien quarantine is already affecting our economy. The lunar and Mars colonies depend on regular supply ships. If this continues, people will start to panic." Over the next few days, Susan worked tirelessly, analyzing recordings of the alien speech. She barely slept or ate. On the 4th day, she burst into the president's office without an appointment. "I found it," Susan exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. "The Council's language doesn't have a word for forgiveness." President Clark frowned. "What do you mean?" "Their justice system is purely retributive. All crimes must be punished, all debts collected in full. The concept of freely forgiving someone who has wronged you, it's completely absent from their language and likely their culture. How does that help us? Asked Alan, who had been called to the meeting. Susan paced the room. It explains why they're so focused on our violent past. Without forgiveness, our history of warfare will always define us in their eyes. They can't understand that we've grown beyond it. The next day, more council ships arrived. A message came from Zixtal. The preliminary evaluation was complete. Humanity was deemed dangerously unpredictable, and the quarantine would continue indefinitely. President Clark requested a formal appeal, which was granted reluctantly. Earth would have one final chance to prove its worthiness. In a secure underground facility, Susan assembled a team of linguists, historians, and cultural experts. We need to teach the council about forgiveness, she told them. It's a concept so foreign to them that it might just save humanity. Meanwhile, Jack Phillips, a young quantum physicist, made a discovery while analyzing the council's communication technology. Their ships used quantum principles similar to theories his team had been developing. If we can adapt our prototype, Jack told his colleagues, we might be able to broadcast a message across their entire network. As Earth prepared its appeal, tension grew. Some nations wanted to attack the alien ships despite their superior technology. Resources were becoming scarce under the quarantine. The World Unity government struggled to maintain order. President Clark addressed the world. Citizens of Earth, we face our greatest challenge. The Galactic Council judges us by our past, unable to see how we've changed. But we have something they lack, the ability to forgive and grow. This will be our strength in the days ahead. Susan looked up from her work when she heard the speech on the lab's television. That's it, she whispered. Forgiveness won't just be our defense, it will be our defiance. 6 months passed. The council ships remained in Earth's orbit, silent and watching. No human vessels could leave the solar system. The Moon and Mars colonies received just enough supplies to survive, but not to thrive. In her small apartment in Geneva, Susan Miller woke up to the sound of sirens. She rushed to the window. People were running in the streets. Food riots had become common in many cities. The quarantine was slowly strangling Earth. Susan's phone rang. It was Alan Wright. The council has requested interviews with selected humans, he said, his voice tired. You're on their list. A shuttle will pick you up in 2 hours. Susan packed, quickly. Her hands shook as she gathered her notes on the council's language. The breakthrough she had made about forgiveness might be humanity's only hope. At the same time, Kate Barrow, a history professor from Boston, received a similar call. Kate specialized in conflict resolution and had studied wars throughout human history. She had gray hair, kind eyes, and a calm voice that made people trust her. The shuttle took Susan, Kate, and 20 other selected humans to the main council ship. They were led to separate rooms for their interviews. Susan faced 3 council members. One was Zixtal, now familiar from many broadcasts. The other 2 were different species, one short and round with orange skin, another tall and thin with feathers instead of hair. Susan Miller, xenolinguist, Zixtal said, you study communication between species that have not previously met. Yes, Susan replied. I've been analyzing your language since you arrived. The orange alien leaned forward. What have you learned? Susan took a deep breath. Your language is remarkable. It's precise and logical, but I've noticed it lacks certain concepts that humans consider fundamental. Such as? Asked the feathered alien. Forgiveness, Susan said. The ability to release someone from blame for a wrong they've done, to move forward without requiring payment or punishment. The 3 aliens looked at each other. Their translators seemed to struggle with the word. This concept is inefficient, Zixtal finally said. Justice requires balance. Wrongs must be righted. But sometimes true balance comes from letting go, Susan explained. It allows both sides to grow and change. In another room, Kate Barrow faced different council members. They questioned her relentlessly about human wars. Why did humans fight? Over land when there was enough for everyone? Asked a snake-like alien. Why did you create weapons that could destroy your entire planet? Asked another. Kate tried to explain human history with honesty. We were driven by fear, greed, and misunderstanding, but we've learned from our mistakes. The World Unity Government. Formed after we nearly destroyed ourselves in the resource wars of 2042. Yet your history shows a pattern of violence followed by peace, then more violence, the snake alien said. How can we trust this peace will last? Meanwhile, far from Geneva, Jack Phillips worked in a secret lab under the Rocky Mountains. The World Unity Government had gathered top scientists to study council technology. Jack led the quantum communications team. Their ships use quantum entanglement for instant communication across vast distances, Jack explained to his team. If we can tap into their network, we could broadcast a message to every council ship and member world simultaneously. His colleague Maya Patel looked skeptical. And what message would save humanity from being quarantined forever? That's not my department, Jack said with a small smile. But Susan Miller has some ideas. Back on the council ship, the interviews continued for days. Susan was questioned about human emotions, Kate about human conflicts. Other selected humans faced similar intense scrutiny. At the World Unity Government headquarters, President Clark met with her advisors. Reports from the interviewed humans were concerning. They don't understand forgiveness, Susan reported via secure channel. They can't comprehend moving forward without retribution. And they're fixated on our violent history, Kate added from a separate call. They can't see past it. President Clark turned to her military advisor, General Roy Adams. What's our status? Not good, Madam President, he replied grimly. Some nations are threatening to attack the council ships despite our orders. The global economy is collapsing under the quarantine, and the Mars colony reports critical supply shortages. We need more time, the president said. Susan's discovery about forgiveness might be the key. And Jack Phillips's team is making progress on the communication technology. A week later, the council announced its decision. Humanity was deemed too dangerous to join galactic society. The quarantine would continue indefinitely. All human technological development would be monitored and restricted. President Clark immediately requested a formal appeal. After 3 tense days, the council granted it reluctantly. You have one final opportunity to present your case, Zixtal informed her. Choose your representatives wisely. The president called an emergency meeting with Susan, Kate, Jack, and other key advisors. This is our last chance, she told them. Susan, your discovery about forgiveness must be the center of our appeal. Jack, how close are you to accessing their communication network? Jack ran his hand through his messy brown hair. We've made a breakthrough. Their quantum network has a vulnerability. We can create what I call a forgiveness beacon to broadcast a message across their entire system. What kind of message? Asked Kate. Susan leaned forward, her green eyes intense. Stories of forgiveness from throughout human history. Times when people chose to let go of hate and move forward. When nations reconciled after terrible wars. Will it work? The president asked. Susan looked uncertain. The concept is so foreign to them it might shock them enough to reconsider, or they might see it as further proof of our irrationality. It's the best chance we have, Kate said. Our history contains darkness, but also light. We need to show them both. President Clark stood up. Then we proceed. Susan, Kate, and Ambassador William Reed will present our appeal to the council in person. Jack, prepare your forgiveness beacon. As the meeting ended, Susan stayed behind with the president. There's something else, Susan said quietly. During my interviews, I noticed divisions among the council members. Some seemed curious about forgiveness, others dismissive. They may not be as united as they appear. President Clark nodded. Find those cracks and widen them. Our future depends on it. That night, as Earth prepared for its final appeal, Susan couldn't sleep. She stood at her window, looking up at the alien ships glittering among the stars. The fate of humanity would be decided soon, and it might hinge on a single word. a concept the Council had never encountered in 50,000 years of galactic history. Forgiveness. The day of the appeal arrived. Earth's team gathered in a small room aboard the shuttle that would take them to the Council chambers. Susan Miller sat quietly, reviewing her notes. Ambassador William Reed paced back and forth, rehearsing his speech. Kate Barrow closed her eyes, taking deep breaths to stay calm. "Remember the plan," Ambassador Reed said. His gray hair was neatly combed, his blue suit pressed. At 60, he was the most experienced diplomat on Earth. "I'll present our formal case. Then Susan will introduce the concept of forgiveness. Kate will share examples from human history." Susan looked up from her notes. "The Council chamber will have representatives from all 387 member species. We need to reach those who might be open to new ideas." The shuttle docked with the massive Council station orbiting Jupiter. The Earth team was led through long hallways with curved walls that glowed softly. Aliens of many shapes and sizes passed by, some floating, some walking on many legs, some sliding like snakes. They entered the Council chamber, a huge round room with rising tiers of seats filled with beings from across the galaxy. In the center was a circular platform where Earth's team would stand. Above them, a transparent dome showed the stars and Jupiter's swirling colors. High Counselor Nexval, a tall being with silver skin, called the meeting to order. "Representatives of Earth may now present their appeal against the judgment of quarantine." Ambassador Reed stepped forward. "Honorable Council, I thank you for this opportunity. We acknowledge humanity has a troubled past. We have fought wars, harmed our planet, and sometimes shown the worst parts of our nature." He paused, looking around the chamber. "But that is not our whole story. Humans also create art, music, and literature. We explore, discover, and build. Most importantly, we learn from our mistakes and grow." The aliens watched silently. Some used devices to translate his words. Others seemed to understand directly. "Our history is not just a record of violence," Reed continued. "It also shows our capacity for change. The World Unity Government formed after our last global conflict, creating the longest period of worldwide peace in our history." High Counselor Nexval interrupted. "Your peace is recent and fragile. Our evaluations show human nature remains violent. Your entertainment celebrates conflict. Your children play games of war. Your nations still maintain weapons." Ambassador Reed nodded. "We are not perfect, but we are evolving, and we have a quality that helps us move beyond our past mistakes." He turned to Susan. She stepped forward, her heart racing. "Honored Council," Susan began. "Human languages contain a concept that your unified language lacks. We call it forgiveness. It means choosing to release someone from blame for a wrong they've done without requiring payment or punishment." The chamber filled with murmurs as translation systems struggled with the concept. Some aliens looked confused, others seemed disturbed. "This is not logical," said a council member with 6 eyes. "Justice requires balance. Wrongs must be addressed." "Forgiveness does not deny wrongdoing," Susan explained. "It acknowledges harm but chooses to break the cycle of retribution. It allows both parties to move forward." Kate Barrow stepped up beside Susan. "Let me share examples from our history." She told the story of Nelson Brown, who forgave the man who killed his daughter and worked with him to help other troubled young people. She described how 2 nations reconciled after a terrible war, becoming strong allies and friends. "Without forgiveness," Kate said, "we would be trapped in endless cycles of revenge. Forgiveness allows us to heal and grow." Some council members seemed intrigued, others looked angry. High Counselor Nexval's silver face showed no emotion. "This concept is troubling," Nexval said. "It suggests abandoning justice. It rewards wrongdoers and ignores victims." "No," Susan said firmly. "Forgiveness doesn't ignore harm. It transcends it. It's a choice that allows healing to begin." Back on Earth, in the secret lab under the Rocky Mountains, Jack Phillips and his team monitored the appeal through a secure channel. They had been working for days without sleep, perfecting the forgiveness beacon. They're not getting it, Jack said, running his hand through his messy hair. The council can't understand forgiveness as an abstract concept. His colleague Maya looked up from her computer. Then maybe we need to show them instead of telling them. Jack nodded. Get the beacon ready. If the appeal fails, we'll activate it. In the council chamber, the debate continued. More council members spoke, most expressing concern about humanity's unpredictable nature. Your concept of forgiveness seems irrational, said a bird-like alien. It would allow dangerous elements to escape consequences. But it also allows for growth and change, Susan countered. Without forgiveness, your judgment of humanity is based only on our past, ignoring what we might become. Ambassador Reed stepped forward again. Honorable Council, we ask you to reconsider your decision. Judge us not only by our history, but by our potential. High Counselor Nexaval conferred with other council leaders. The Earth team waited, tense and hopeful. Finally, Nexaval spoke. We have reviewed your appeal. The Council's decision stands. Humanity will remain quarantined until you demonstrate evolutionary changes that reduce your violent tendencies. This may take centuries or longer. Ambassador Reed's shoulders slumped. Susan felt tears in her eyes. Kate reached out to steady herself against the platform. At that moment, Linda Foster, a cultural anthropologist on Earth's team who had been quiet until now, stepped forward. She had been studying council members' reactions during the appeal. Susan, she whispered urgently. Several species showed interest when you explained forgiveness. The Unity Cluster representatives, the Volari and the Mesh Collective, they were listening differently. Susan looked at the sections Linda pointed out. The Unity Cluster were plant-like beings who communicated through color changes. The Volari were small blue humanoids. The Mesh Collective were silver spheres that floated together in patterns. We need to reach them directly, Susan said. They might be our only hope. As the Earth team was escorted from the chamber, Susan sent an urgent message to Jack. Activate the beacon. Target the Unity Cluster, Volari and Mesh Collective first. In the lab under the mountains, Jack received the message. It's time, he told his team. Let's show the galaxy what forgiveness looks like. They activated the forgiveness beacon. Quantum particles entangled with the Council's communication network carried a signal across vast distances. Throughout the Council station and across their communication systems, stories of human forgiveness began playing. Not just words, but images, music, and emotions. The stories showed people who had every reason to hate but chose to forgive, nations that had been enemies becoming friends, communities healing after tragedy through compassion and understanding. The Council station erupted in chaos as the unexpected transmission spread from system to system. The Earth team, being led back to their shuttle, saw aliens around them reacting, with confusion, anger, and, from some, wonder. What have you done? Demanded their escort. Susan looked at the Unity Cluster representatives nearby, their leaves changing to a deep purple color that she somehow knew meant deep thought. We've introduced ourselves properly, she said. Now the real conversation can begin. Chaos spread through the Council station. The forgiveness beacon continued to broadcast stories across every communication channel. Some Council species tried to block the signal. Others watched, fascinated by the human concept they had never encountered before. Susan, Kate, Ambassador Reed, and Linda were rushed back to their shuttle. Guards with weapons surrounded them. You have violated Council law, said the head guard, a reptilian being with scales that shifted color with emotion. Currently, they were bright red. Unauthorized broadcasts are forbidden. Ambassador Reed stepped forward. We meant no harm. We only wanted to share our perspective. Before the guard could respond, a message came through on his communication device. He listened, then looked at the humans with surprise. You are to return to your shuttle but remain docked, he said. The Council is in emergency session. Once inside their shuttle, the Earth team gathered around the communication screen. They could see the Council chamber, now in disarray. Some representatives were shouting. Others sat in silence. A few had left their seats to form small groups, talking urgently. What's happening? Kate asked. Linda studied the scene. I think the beacon worked. Look at the Unity Cluster representatives. The plant-like beings were changing colors rapidly, their leaves shifting through purple, blue, and a soft green. They were communicating intensely. And the Volari, Susan pointed. The small blue humanoids were moving through the chamber, speaking to representatives from other species. Hours passed. The Earth team waited anxiously, unable to leave their shuttle but not yet sent back to Earth. They received occasional updates from Jack and his team, who monitored the Council's communications. The Unity Cluster is formally questioning the judgment against Earth, Jack reported. They're citing inconsistencies in how the Council has treated other species with violent histories. The Mesh Collective has requested more information about forgiveness, Maya added. They're particularly interested in how it affects social bonds. Ambassador Reed paced the shuttle. This is unprecedented. No species has ever challenged a Council quarantine decision before. Late that night, a new message arrived. The Earth. Team was requested to appear before a special session of the Council the next day. This could be good or bad, Ambassador Reed said. Either way, we've made them think, Susan replied. The next morning, they returned to the Council chamber. It was less crowded now, with only about 50 representatives present. High Counselor Nexival was there, along with representatives from the Unity Cluster, the Volari, the Mesh Collective, and several other species. Representatives of Earth, Nexival began. Your unauthorized broadcast has caused significant disruption. However, some Council members have expressed interest in further discussion about this concept of forgiveness. A Unity Cluster being moved forward, its leaves a gentle blue color. We find this concept intriguing. In our history, we have faced conflicts that remained unresolved for millennia because neither side would yield. Perhaps this human idea offers another path. A Volari stepped up beside the plant being. The Volari Confederation has reviewed Earth's historical records. We note that human societies that practice forgiveness show greater stability and progress than those that do not. Nexval's silver face showed the first emotion the humans had seen, a slight frown. This does not change the facts. Human history demonstrates violent tendencies. Yes, Susan said, taking a careful step forward. We have been violent. We don't deny that. But forgiveness allows us to acknowledge our wrongs and still move forward. Without it, we would be forever defined by our worst moments. A being from the Mesh Collective floated forward. Its silver surface rippled as it spoke. The Council has existed for 50,000 years. In that time, we have judged many species based on their past actions. Perhaps we have been missing an important variable in our equations. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Susan could feel the tension in the air. What are you suggesting? Nexval asked the Mesh Collective being. That we reconsider not just Earth's case, but our entire approach to evaluating species, it replied. The human concept of forgiveness suggests that past behavior need not determine future actions if growth occurs. Nexival stood very still. This is dangerous thinking. Our entire legal and social system is based on predictable consequences for actions. Perhaps it is time for our systems to evolve, said the Volari representative. The debate continued for hours. The Earth team watched as the Council split into factions. Some species strongly opposed any reconsideration. Others were curious about forgiveness and its applications. Finally, Nexival called for order. We will not reach agreement today. The full Council must consider these matters. Earth representatives will return to their planet while we deliberate. As they prepared to leave, the Unity Cluster representative approached Susan. Its leaves had turned a color she had never seen before, something between gold and rose. We wish to learn more about forgiveness, it said. Would you share your knowledge with us privately? Susan looked at Ambassador Reed, who nodded slightly. We would be honored, she replied. Similar requests came from the Volari and 3 other species. Ambassador Reed agreed to all of them, his diplomatic face hiding his excitement. As they boarded their shuttle to return to Earth, Linda pulled Susan aside. "We've created a divide in the Council," she said. "Some species are fascinated by forgiveness. Others see it as a threat to their entire way of life. Is that good or bad for us?" Susan asked. "Both," Linda replied. "We have allies now, but also stronger enemies. The Council will never be the same." Back on Earth, President Clark received their report in her office. The world situation had worsened during their absence. Food riots had spread. The Mars colony had declared emergency rationing. "So the Council is still deciding," she said, her face showing the strain of months of crisis. "Yes, but something important has changed," Ambassador Reed said. "We've found allies. The Unity Cluster, the Volari, and others want to learn about forgiveness. Can they help us?" the President asked. Jack Phillips, who had joined the meeting, looked up from his datapad. "Maybe. We've detected unusual energy readings from the Unity Cluster ships. They've moved closer to Earth, outside the main Council fleet. They're positioning themselves between us and the Council ships that might harm us," Linda suggested. President Clark stood and walked to the window. Beyond the city, she could see a Council ship hanging in the sky. "So we wait," she said. "We continue to teach them about forgiveness, and we hope it's enough." That night, unknown to Earth's government, a small ship from the Unity Cluster docked secretly with the Horizon, Alan Wright's vessel. Alan met 3 Unity Cluster beings in his private quarters. "We wish to propose an alliance," their leader said, its leaves shifting to a formal purple. "There are others in the galaxy who would value your concept of forgiveness. The Council's structure has been rigid for too long." Alan studied them carefully. "What exactly are you suggesting?" "Help us understand forgiveness better. In return, we will help Earth establish hidden colonies beyond your solar system. The quarantine may continue officially, but you need not be confined." Alan thought of Earth's struggling colonies, the food shortages, the loss of hope. "I'll need to discuss this with my government," he said. The plant being's leaves turned a knowing green. "Of course, but remember, sometimes forgiveness must be paired with boldness." As the secret visitors departed, Alan looked out at the stars. One word had changed everything. Humanity's defiance through forgiveness was just beginning. 3 months passed since the secret meeting between Alan Wright and the Unity Cluster representatives. Earth remained under quarantine, but things had changed in important ways. President Clark sat in her office with her closest advisors. Alan Wright stood by the window looking at the city below. Susan Miller and Jack Phillips sat across from the president. Ambassador Reed joined them through a secure video link from his new post on Mars. "The Council remains officially divided on our status," President Clark said, "but our unofficial alliances are growing stronger." Alan turned from the window. "The Unity Cluster has helped us establish our first hidden colony on a planet they call Blue Haven. It's 20 light-years away, with Earth-like conditions. 300 colonists have already arrived safely. The Volari have shared medical technology. That's helping us address food shortages," Jack added. "Their plant growth accelerators have increased our crop yields by 40%. Susan looked up from her notes. "And 7 more Council species have requested information about forgiveness. They've sent representatives to Earth to learn directly from our historians and philosophers." On the video screen, Ambassador Reed nodded. "The Mars colony is recovering. The Mesh Collective provided us with advanced energy systems that solve our power problems." President Clark smiled for the first time in months. "So we're still officially quarantined, but we're secretly expanding into the galaxy and gaining powerful friends." "Yes," Alan said. "But the Council's main faction, led by High Counselor Nexval, remains firmly against us. They've increased patrols around the solar system and punished the species who openly supported us, which makes our secret alliances even more important," Susan said. The meeting was interrupted by an urgent message. A Unity Cluster ship had arrived with news. The Council was holding an emergency session. Earth's presence was requested immediately. Within hours, a delegation including Susan, Alan, and President Clark herself traveled to the Council station. They were escorted directly to the chamber, which was filled with representatives from all 387 member species. High Counselor Nexaval stood at the center, his silver face showing rare emotion. Anger. "Representatives of Earth," he said as they entered, "we have discovered your violations of the quarantine. Hidden colonies, unauthorized technology exchanges, secret alliances." President Clark stepped forward. "We have done what was necessary for our survival. The quarantine was strangling our world." "Your actions prove our judgment correct," Nexval said. "Humans are dangerous and unpredictable." Before he could continue, a Unity Cluster representative moved forward. Its leaves were a deep, confident green. "The real issue," it said, "is not human behavior, but the Council's inability to understand forgiveness. This concept has spread among our species. We find it valuable and necessary for true progress." A Valari representative joined the Unity Cluster being, "We have studied human history extensively. Yes, they have been violent, but their capacity for forgiveness has allowed them to move beyond cycles of revenge that have trapped other species for millennia." Nexval looked around the chamber. More species were standing up, moving to join the Earth allies. "This is unprecedented," he said. "The Council has never been divided this way." "Perhaps it is time for change," said a Mesh Collective representative. "We have followed the same patterns for 50,000 years. The human concept of forgiveness offers us new possibilities." Nexval's anger seemed to fade, replaced by confusion. "You would risk the stability of the galaxy for this new idea?" "Yes," said the Unity Cluster representative simply. The chamber erupted in discussion. Susan watched as more species moved to support Earth, while others remained firmly with Nexaval. The division was nearly equal. President Clark stepped forward again. Her voice was calm but carried throughout the chamber. "Honored Council members," she said, "we did not come here to divide you. We understand your concern about our violent history. We acknowledge our mistakes and failures." She paused, looking directly at Nexaval. "And we forgive your harsh judgment of us. We forgive your inability to see beyond our past. We forgive your fear of what you don't understand." Gasps spread through the chamber. Some representatives seemed shocked by her words. Others looked thoughtful. "This is not how the Council operates," Nexval said, but his voice held less certainty. "Perhaps that should change," President Clark replied. "Forgiveness does not mean ignoring wrongs or forgetting the past. It means choosing to move forward, to give others the chance to grow and change." A new voice spoke. It belonged to an ancient species that rarely participated in council matters. Their representative was small and frail, with skin like old paper. "I have observed this council for 12,000 years, the elder said. "In that time, we have judged many species, quarantined some, destroyed others. Yet the galaxy remains full of conflict. Perhaps this human concept deserves consideration." Nexaval looked at the elder with respect. "What do you suggest?" "End Earth's quarantine conditionally," the elder said. "Allow them limited expansion under observation. Let them teach those who wish to learn about forgiveness. In return, they must share their progress and respect council boundaries." The debate continued for hours. Finally, a compromise was reached. Earth's quarantine would be partially lifted. Human ships could travel to designated star systems. The hidden colonies would be officially recognized. Earth would establish cultural exchange centers where interested species could learn about forgiveness. As they prepared to return to Earth with the news, Susan found herself standing next to Nexaval. "I still do not fully understand this concept," he said quietly. "It takes time," Susan replied. "Forgiveness isn't easy even for humans who grow up with the idea. It's a choice we make again and again." "Why?" he asked. "What benefit does it provide?" Susan thought for a moment. "Freedom," she said finally. "When we forgive, we free ourselves from being trapped in the past. We create space for new possibilities." Nexval was silent for a long time. "I will consider this," he said at last. 1 year later, Earth celebrated the departure of its first official interstellar expedition. The starship Horizon, commanded by Alan Wright, would visit 12 star systems to establish formal relations with Council worlds. Susan Miller stood with President Clark watching the ship rise into the sky. One word, Susan said softly. One concept that the Council had never encountered in 50,000 years. One word that changed everything, President Clark agreed. Forgiveness. The Horizon vanished into faster-than-light travel, carrying humanity's message to the stars. Behind it, Council ships from the Unity Cluster, the Volari, and even Nexaval's own fleet escorted the human vessel. The quarantine that was meant to contain humanity had instead spread a revolution of thought throughout the galaxy. The one word that humanity used to defy the Galactic Council was becoming the foundation of a new understanding among the stars. And it had only just begun.